Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to welcome you to another episode of the Business of Inner Peace. I'm your host, Erin Jean, and today we have a special guest. Her name is Stephanie Crabtree. Stephanie is a holistic registered dietitian with over 14 years experience. She is passionate about helping Christian women overcome exhaustion, bloating, and hormone imbalances through a faith-rooted, real food approach. She's the creator of Restoring Eden, which is an 8-week transformational gut and hormone healing course designed to bring women back to the vibrant health that God intended. I know we're going to have a great conversation. I'm excited you're here. Grab your favorite drink and stay tuned. Welcome to the Business of Inner Peace. I'm your host, Erin Jean, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's pretend we're sitting in my living room enjoying a cup of coffee or tea and getting to know each other just a little better. That's what I love. I love getting to hear your story. I love feeling connected by the spirit of understanding that our stories bring. Today, I'm sharing some of my story, but I hope someday soon you'll be telling me yours. Listen, I know that you're feeling overwhelmed with life and nothing is exactly how you'd like it to be. Your marriage is not what you hoped for. Motherhood is harder than you imagined, and you've lost yourself somewhere in the mix of responsibilities. Well, if you're ready to bring some more peace and joy into your life, reconnect with God who made you, and start living a life you love, then grab your cup of coffee or tea, and let's dive into today's show. Well, welcome, Stephanie. I'm so glad to have you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. I always say this, and I'll never stop. I just love stories. I think it's the fastest way for us to connect as humans. And of
Yes.
course, like the Bible and all of history, it's just full of stories. It's what we love. So I love to always start off by learning your story. What is it that brought you into the world of being a dietitian and then wanting to help women?
Yeah, great question. So I knew early on that I wanted to be a dietitian. Actually, in sixth grade, we did a project of what do you want to be when you grow up? And my parents were in the middle of this weight loss journey and they were seeing a dietitian. And so I shadowed her for a day and I just saw so many positive impacts that she was making. Now, granted, this is in the 90s. And so a lot of like low fat this, low fat that. But I just really loved how she took recipes that were kind of family favorites and helped us to at the time, make them healthier, and that was maybe more low fat, low calorie, things of that nature. And so I started cooking more in the kitchen with my mom, and I just loved it. I fell in love with the food, helping people feel better, reducing the risk of chronic diseases. It just kind of all started. So I went to college. I got a 4-year degree in nutrition. I got a dietetic internship right out of college and with a combined master's degree. I did that. I actually entered the clinical nutrition space. It's funny because when I think back, I always wanted to have my own business because I wanted the flexibility and I wanted to really feel like I was helping people on a one-on-one basis. But after going to school, it felt like I just needed a clinic job to just pay the bills and all the things. So I entered the clinical space and did that for like 10 years. And at the end of that, I was very disillusioned with the medical system the way it is. I was struggling with, I had started seeing a naturopath on my own and started down that road of kind of functional medicine. And I realized that the things that I was telling my patients and in the clinic, I could not fully tell them the things I wanted to tell them because I was beholden to what the clinic wanted me to tell patients and such. So it was a real, honestly, come to Jesus moment where I was like, I ethically don't feel like I can do this anymore. And like the Lord opened up a window for us to we were in the Pacific Northwest, and so we actually basically sold everything and moved across the country, and I took a year off, and I just kind of prayed like, "Okay, God, what is next for me?" You know, I had 3 small kids at the time. I knew I didn't wanna go back to traditional clinical nutrition, like, at a hospital, but the thought of starting a business was terrifying. But that's what the Lord nudged me into. Of course. And so I took a year to kind of think about how that process was going to go. I actually did a functional medicine internship program to learn more about the functional approach. And I just fell in love with it. It was like, yes, this is what I was created to do, to help women use real food, movement, circadian rhythms, just all the things that the Lord designed to like create a truly holistic self. And that's when I started my business, and I would do one-on-one coaching, but then I also created a group program because I wanted to reach more women with the basics, because that's where I found a lot of healing, was just the intentional small choices that you do every day that can make such a huge difference if you're able to be consistent with those kinds of things. So that's the shortened version.
That's so cool. Good for you for being brave and listening to the Lord. And man, I can really relate to the feeling disillusioned part. I think for me, it was the journey of motherhood that
Mhm.
made me start to question all of the things that are
Yeah.
recommended to us by
Same.
Western medicine. And
Mhm.
a cousin of mine introduced me to like essential oils, and that was sort of like my little gateway into holistic health. And like, I can relate to what you're saying. I just fell so in love with the
Yes.
learning of all of it. It's really fun to see how God actually has given us so many
Mhm.
resources in nature and on this planet that are meant to nourish us and support us and heal us, along with our crazy, amazing bodies that can heal themselves, right?
Yes.
Bodies are so amazing.
Yeah.
So I can relate to that. But what I can't relate to is this. I knew what I wanted to do when I was 12. I
Yeah.
was, what? I don't think I've ever met anyone like you. That's
I
really
know.
sweet.
People are shocked by that, and I'm actually a little bit shocked, but I'm very type A and very firstborn, and so it's just like, "This is what I'm gonna do," and honestly, I do feel now looking back that the Lord was telling me, like, the Holy Spirit was guiding me throughout this process, because I just love nutrition so much. I love that what we eat can change our cellular biology. I love that the body is one unit. I love that food is a source of pleasure and enjoyment, but also so much nutrition and all the things that are happening on a anatomy and physiology perspective. I just think it's so amazing. So,
It is so amazing. All right. Well, I got two questions for you. One, when I was kind of reading about what you do, you said an interesting sentence that women that are kind of experiencing these struggles in their weight and maybe being bloated, that it might not necessarily be about um, them and the choices they're making so much as their physiology. And so I'd love to kind of hear you talk about, like, break that down for me. What does that mean?
yeah. So, bloating is complicated, right? There could be emotional things that are affecting our biology. It could be stress. It could be what's called dysbiosis in your gut, which just means that the good bacteria and the bad bacteria are kind of out of range. It could be an infection of some kind. It could be the way you're eating in terms of your circadian rhythms and things of that nature. And so, what I like to do is kind of approach again from a holistic perspective. How can we what are your habits like right now? What is your baseline? And then where can we make these small adjustments and improvements to help with the symptoms that you might be experiencing, whether it's bloating or cycles of constipation or diarrhea or just irregular bowel movements, but also things like feeling tired every day at 2 o'clock, or feeling like you have to have a caffeine hit, in that later afternoon, or you're going to bed and you're feeling wired and tired. Like, how do we make little tweaks in your diet and your lifestyle? Because we know that it's not just food that can cause this bloating issue. And I think a lot of times people are like, oh, well, I'm sensitive to dairy or I'm sensitive to gluten, but that's not truly a root cause. That is just a symptom. It could be leaky gut that's causing that. It could be parasites. It could be overgrowth of, again, other different bacteria. So, there's testing that's possible, but there's also some trial and error that you can do as well. So I think, again, approaching things from a very holistic perspective is totally my jam, because you can't do one thing to fix it. And that's what I've learned the most, is that there is no one thing. There's no one drink, there's no one pill, there's no one probiotic that's going to necessarily solve the problem. We need to really look at it from a very intentional and holistic perspective.
Yeah, as I think about nutrition, and I'm just going to voice my own thoughts in my head because there could be somebody out there that is thinking like me. Um, I find this to be like one of the most overwhelming um areas of health, and mostly because there's like so many different things that are being taught by, it feels like really well educated people, and then I like listen to what they're saying and it all makes sense, but at the end it all like contradicts each other. um,
Mhm.
and so having tried everything from like the keto stuff, to intermittent fasting, to trying to do more like high protein or just focusing on whole foods. Like I've struggled to really find something that works for me long term,
Yeah.
and then also, I guess, matches some of the science of what they're saying. Like, more recently in my health journey, I started intermittent fasting. I actually felt really great and it was working really well, but I decided to kind of pull back from it because there's some science currently that's saying like all of this was like studied on a tiny man, not on a woman, right? And
Mhm.
like women aren't supposed to be doing that type of fasting. But since I've stopped, my body's like not feeling the way that it was. So, what are your thoughts about all
Yes. So many thoughts. Okay. So first of all, one a book that I highly recommend, it's called Fast Like a Girl. So it actually talks about women and our hormones and how we as women need to be thinking about fasting because according to our cycles for cycling women, we need to be cautious about how we're fasting at different times of the month. And so that book is just phenomenal. It gives a lot of good data to support what type of fasting and when. But I also go back to how did God design our bodies to eat? If you think about creation and you think about how we were originally designed, we woke up in the morning, we, ate who knows how many times or whatnot, but we ate during the day. And then once the sun went down, we went to bed because we didn't have, there were no artificial lights, right? So if we can also try to align our eating and our activity with our circadian rhythm, that is huge. So, you know, eating dinner when it's light out, preferably, and then stopping and not eating again until the sun is up, and really just kind of being conscientious about again your circadian rhythm is huge. Um, and it is confusing out there because honestly, nutrition research is hard to do and it requires a lot of nuance to understand what research is being done and what the study actually showed. I feel like when I did my master's degree, I learned so much, but I learned how much we don't know because nutrition research is so hard to do because you have genetics that are at play, you have individual choice that's at play, and a lot of these studies are having people self-assess themselves. So you write down how many fruits did you eat a day? How many vegetables did you eat a day? And when we self-report, it's like, "Oh, I had a cup of broccoli." And it's like, "Did you have a cup of broccoli or was it a half cup?" And so they're really making a lot of assumptions in a lot of nutrition research. And so you have to kind of muck through all of the data to really figure out what is this truly saying and is this even valid. That's why a lot of people will look at animal studies and it's like, okay, well, animal studies can sometimes give us some insight, but again, they're in animals and not humans. And so it is tricky out there, but I always go back to when I get over because I get overwhelmed as a dietitian with a master's degree in nutrition. I get overwhelmed sometimes with the stuff out there.
Thank you.
You are not alone. No one is alone, and no one has the answer, and if they say they have the answer, they don't. They're not telling you the truth. And so I again go back to how did the Lord design our bodies? What do we know from scripture? Like, what does the Bible tell us? We know that everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. And so how can we weed through some of this noise and also live in a place of peace within ourselves that our choices are good and that there's no shame with eating. There's no guilt because we know that when shame and guilt are in our minds, like our body is not going to respond well to that, that when we put those together with food. And so I really encourage people to just focus on the basics. Like, let's get back to the basics with food. Um, remove the things that we know that God didn't create, right? Is it a plant or was it made in a plant? Sort of a concept, right? Like, how can we get back to the most basic form of nutrition? Because that's the way the Lord designed us. And this even goes into supplements because the Lord did not design us to eat 7 supplements a day. Did not say to Adam and Eve, here's your 17 powders for the day. Good luck with it. No, he was like, here's the garden. You get to eat with what I've given you. And so that's always my kind of go back to this and think through logically, critical thinking. Um, how is our body designed to function at
Yeah.
its best?
A little bit of a challenge for you on the supplement piece because I know that, like, if we were in that ideal world, if we were in Eden, it would be easy to get things, right? But, like, because we're living with a place like Monsanto and GMOs and, overly farmed land that the soil doesn't have the same nutrients anymore, and therefore the plants and stuff don't have the same nutrients in them as they used to. Like, I've just have heard and
Mhm.
kind of believe that, it's almost impossible to get what we need without supplementation because everything's been so depleted. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
about that?
I do agree. So I am not anti-supplement. I just think that sometimes people will try to out supplement maybe a bad diet. So I'm always going to be a food first dietitian. Like, let's get your foundation set up. But I do think that there are some really valid supplements that someone can take. It's very personalized. So I think that always finding a really good practitioner or provider that you can work with to really tailor supplements to you, because you can spend a lot of money. That's the other hard part is they can get very expensive. And just because maybe an influencer or someone with influence is saying that this is the best supplement they've ever had or it's changed their life, it doesn't mean it's going to change your life. And so I think really critically thinking about what are your maybe pre-existing conditions or what are you hoping to get out of the supplement and what's the best quality that we can be getting. That's another huge thing. And this is a whole session in my Restoring Eden course because it's such a hot topic. Yeah, just supplements in general. And it's all educational. It's not personal medical advice, but just really trying to think about supplements and how we can steward our health in that way as well.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been loving about this day and age that we're in is that it's becoming easier and easier for people to take tests to kind of see where their bodies are at under different things. So I personally have done like a lot of testing on finding out my omega 3 to 6 ratio,
Yes. So good.
finding out I just got DNA test results, doing the vitamin D, doing the gut health. So I was just curious, like, what kind of tests do you think are beneficial, and what kind of tests do you usually do? Because you can compare one too, right? It's like there's a whole lot of stuff. Like, what do you usually do with clients?
Yeah, so there are a ton, and you can spend thousands and thousands of dollars on testing. And if you have the money, that's great. Test, don't guess. However, they get expensive and they stack up. So I do the genetic testing with people because I feel like your genes don't change. And so if we know that our genetics load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger, what's the smoking gun, right? What can we do to then maybe change the course of what our genes are going to express, right? So I think that's really valuable. I also really like stool testing, especially if someone's having gut issues or persistent health issues. I think everything starts in the gut. And so if we can do a good stool test, it is one marker in time and they do change. You could do one this month and you could do one the next month and it might be slightly different, but I'm looking at it from a big picture perspective. Like what are we working with here? To really guide people on like a path towards like gut health and gut restoration. I think food sensitivity testing can also have its place. It's not a root cause. Um, but if you are in a state of chronic inflammation and things are just not working for you, and you've done elimination diets in the past, like Whole 30 or something like that, and it didn't help, that's where personalized food sensitivity testing might actually benefit you because you can see what specifically is your body reacting to. And that can be helpful in the restoration process as well. Um, I don't personally do the hair mineral analysis. I know that one can be valuable for people. There's also things like organic acid testing, there's environmental toxin testing. I don't do those ones as much. I mainly stick to the gut ones because I feel like that's the place where we need to start is like, let's start in the gut. Let's try to restore that. And then if things are persistently coming up, then maybe it's time to look deeper. But most people, if the foundation isn't there, we need to start with kind of that foundational health. So
Yeah.
and a good functional blood chemistry is also huge. A lot of times you don't see things in the blood until it's maybe too late, but there are signs and symptoms. So getting consistent blood work like once a year or I know Function Health is one that does some really good biomarkers. That's Dr. Mark Hyman's co-company. It's like $500 a year and you get labs twice a year and it's very comprehensive. So I've looked into that for clients before too. Because just being able to track your own data over time is so important. Like, do you see your insulin numbers going up? Do you see your A1C going up? Like, are you leaning towards insulin sensitivity or insulin resistance and kind of some of those things to get on the preventative side of things instead of the reactive side of things. So, I'm definitely a big fan of testing in the right environment and then also figuring out what's your end goal. Like, let's start there. What's the end goal? And let's work backwards to try to figure out how we get there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. There's a company called Zoe, and they do testing and kind of share nutritional information. And what I would say the big learning for me is that not having somebody to actually work with you personally
Yeah.
um, really matters. And so nothing against that company. I wouldn't recommend it because there isn't that personal touch. And I think it would be better to work with someone one-on-one, like you're offering, because, it was like the gut health test was bad, and then they give you real generic, like,
Yeah.
nutrition information,
Yep.
and then second gut health test was worse, and I was like, "Wow, what the heck?"
I know. I've heard that about the Viomi test too. I think they have an app where like one of my friends did it and it's not cheap. It's like $400. And then she was like, I have no clue what to do with this. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. That's terrible.
No, it is not cheap. It's like 200 and something dollars to
Yeah.
and then they lock you in for a year of paying like $26 a month for their membership, but really it's just an app that tells you very generic nutrition stuff, and you can like keep track of your food on it if you want. I haven't found it to be
Mhm.
helpful, and so I'm saying, hey, everybody learn from me.
Yeah. Yes. It is
Don't work
it's
with
tricky.
Stephanie.
You do need someone who knows how to read the test, and again, that big picture perspective. If you perseverate on the nitty-gritty details, you're not gonna get anywhere. It's that big picture, like, not just what you're eating, but what is your lifestyle? Again, circadian rhythm is huge. Stress is huge. How do we get you into rest and digest that, parasympathetic state instead of constantly being, like, in a fight or flight? And so, I feel like you do need someone to help you along that road, because so funny, one of my clients was like, "Yeah, I thought I ate really healthy until we started working together, and I realized, oh, I actually don't eat healthy at all." And I was like, "Okay, yay, we're making progress."
We're making progress. Yeah. Yeah, I have learned over the years, people definitely have different ideas in their mind about what healthy is. And when you find out what they're thinking healthy is, sometimes you're like, what? And I'm sure there's something that I think is healthy that probably
Totally.
I'm probably missing the mark. But it
Totally.
goes back to this. It's confusing. There's
Yes.
so many different things out there, and we have gone through all of these fads
Mhm.
where ultimately when you look at it, you can see that big food had such a hand in trying to like push society a certain way to have kind of like these lifetime
Yep.
consumers that are essentially addicted to the products that they put out.
Mhm.
um, it's just crazy. Like, even there was a documentary once on being a vegan, and they were recommending, like, Oreos and Teddy Grahams as their great vegan choices.
Yeah, the junk food vegan is a term that I heard a lot in school. Like, people will say they're vegans, but they eat chips and crackers, and they're not getting any protein, and they like, wither away because they're not getting B vitamins, they're not getting good adequate protein, they're not getting the cofactors they need for metabolism, and so they get really sick, actually. Um, and I struggle, honestly, with any diet that fully removes any food group because I don't see that that's how we were intended to live. So,
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that because I would say there's clearly a big push right now for the last maybe 5 to 10 years within big food
mhm.
to move us to plant-based. I believe they're kind of trying to sell us this lie that if we go plant-based, it's going to save the planet,
Yep,
which honestly, I personally think is just BS
propaganda.
because I think we could save the planet if we start farming right.
Yes,
Um,
100%. Yeah,
but they want us to believe something different. But when you look at that, the food that they're selling, it's all like made in labs and genetically modified, this plant-based stuff. It might have some plants in it, but
right.
I don't think it's good. So,
Mhm.
what are your thoughts about that? Like, do you think we should be eating lots of meat and in our diet, or what's your thought?
I really this is kind of ironic because you hear a lot of dietitians say, like, everything in moderation, and I don't believe everything in moderation. I truly believe that there are foods that we need to stay away from. But I'm all about back to the basics with food, right? Do we need to be eating steak for every breakfast? No. Should we make sure that we're getting good whole plant nutrition into our diets? Absolutely. But we do need to come back to that concept of, you know, was it, is it a plant or was it made in a plant sort of concept? Like, is it something that we can, pick from the ground or that we can get that doesn't have an actual ingredient label on it? Or is it something with an ingredient list that's this long, 17 words long and with words that are 16 characters long? So, um, I think that, we getting a balanced diet is important. So, grass finished beef is so key, wild caught fish is so key. And then with chicken and pork, those animals, what they eat really matters, So pork is one that I don't really recommend people eat a lot of if it's conventional pork. But if you can find a good pig farmer who is treating the animals well, they are feeding the animals well, then pork can be consumed safely. But just getting a pork loin or pork chops from your local grocery store, that's probably not the case. Chicken can be kinda like that as well. And then same with, like, dairy products, there's a lot of research that shows that dairy can be anti-inflammatory if the cows are fed the right diet. And so it's key to be looking for organic or A2, dairy products or, grass-fed cows, they're just gonna have a much richer source of in their diet that's going to then translate to the milk as well. Um so, sometimes I do think there are periods of time where you do have to avoid things, maybe if you're having some gut issues, but then always bringing that restoration piece in of like, let's bring them back and see like how we do if been able to kind of bring health to the gut. Because we know that so many people struggle with leaky gut, and leaky gut is just pervasive because of the glyphosate and because of all the processed foods and because of the stress in our environment. And so, being able to work to compensate that can be a helpful thing to do first, and then bring in the foods that you might have been avoiding because of symptoms or whatnot. So, um, and that's where I love the concept of regenerative farming, because regenerative farming is really what is the health of the soil? How are we able to work within the rhythms, again, that God created, to not spray everything down to just kill it? Because when we do that, it the fruit and the vegetables might survive, but think about the health of the soil. So even if you're getting an organic produce from, let's say, the clean 15, which, you've got the dirty dozen, which are the ones that are highest in pesticides, and you've got the clean 15, which don't have as many don't have as much pesticide residue on them as the dirty dozen. The environmental working group comes out with this list every year. And so, but even if you're getting something on the clean 15, you have to think about that soil. So if it's been sprayed with traditional pesticides, that soil is going to be pretty much dead, because it's like taking an antibiotic in your gut microbiome, which is going to get rid of the good stuff and the bad stuff. And so we really need to treat our soil better so that we can retain more nutrition. And this is hard, right? Because I'm not a farmer. Like I don't, how do you find people that are doing this? That's the hard part. But doing what you can, uh, local farmers markets. That's what my husband and I have been doing. We've been getting out there and like literally talking to the farmers and being like, what are your practices? Like, and it's awkward sometimes, but I think the more that we're able to really get in touch with kind of our local food supply, um, the more we're going to learn and benefit from the nutrition in those products.
Yeah, I know there is a part of me that keeps wanting to be a farmer,
Hmm.
but then I'm like, I'm not really sure I'm cut out for this. I
No,
don't think I have what it takes, but I
no.
just want to do better for our
Yeah.
family and the planet.
100%. There was a documentary, I think that of a couple out of California. I think it was called like Big Little Farm or something.
Yeah, I love that
It
documentary.
was so good. It was so good at just illuminating kind of the problem and like what they did to solve the problem, but then also how hard it was. Like it wasn't an easy process. Uh,
Yeah.
so
I loved it too because I really saw God's hand in all of it because
yes.
a lot of it is principles that God talks about in the Bible. And wasn't it interesting? It took exactly 7 years
Yes.
to bring everything into balance. I was like, oh, there's
You
God's
would be
number.
believe. Yeah, I know. It's so cool.
It was really cool to watch that. I mean, they weren't highlighting it in the documentary, but I saw it.
We know
I
it's
know
God.
the truth.
Right.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. Well, share with our listeners out there how they can work with you and what's the next best steps to connect with you.
Absolutely. So on Instagram, I am at Holistic Health RD. My name is Stephanie Crabtree, so that will pop up. And then I am doing another round of Restoring Eden in August and then also in September. So 2 sessions before the holidays get done. And I think that's a great place to start because that's going to be your foundational health, right? So there's 8 weeks of modules, and I go through kind of, the state of why we're in the problem we're in, your gut health, how to work on hormone health, and all from a real food perspective. I do talk about meal planning. There is a session on supplements, but it just gives you kind of the foundation of a functional medicine perspective. And then from there, if you've already kind of been down this road and you're really looking for that one-on-one testing, again, I do the genetic testing, I do stool testing, and I do food sensitivity testing on one-on-one packages and such. So the genetic testing can be a one-off. The gut package is more of a 5-month program because we go through a whole protocol together and work through whatever we find in the gut test. But those are all the ways, and I'm working on a website, so it's not quite ready yet. So the best way would be to reach out on Instagram, send me a message, and or you can also shoot me an email, which I'll give you my email address to put in the notes as well. So
Okay, great. Yeah, we will put all the links in the notes so that everyone can find you. Wow, you just sound like a wealth of really good information.
thank you.
I love what you're doing, and I especially love that you've got the perspective of God's lens on it. I think that's always the best way to handle anything in life is taking God's perspective into it. So I love ending every episode with just a prayer for my guest. Is that okay with you?
Yes, 100%. I love it.
Awesome. Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you so much for Stephanie. I thank you for this day, for the time you've set apart for us to connect. We just ask that you would bless her, that you would bless her business and all that she's doing to, really work to better women's lives and ultimately families' lives because we know how important moms are in the home. And we just pray also over every listener, every person that maybe has just been so tired of this food struggle and whatever's going on in their body. We pray that you would give them wisdom and guidance, and that if they really feel that zing today, that they would reach out and connect with Stephanie as maybe a first step to healing what's going on in their body. So we thank you so much, Lord, that we are wonderfully and beautifully made, and all the gifts you've given us on this earth. We give you glory and praise for it all. In Jesus' name, amen. I hope you enjoyed
Amen.
today's episode. If you're feeling blessed by the content here, the number one way you can show me is by leaving me a written review of the show. I'd be forever grateful. Knowing that you're out there listening helps me know that I'm truly living out God's purpose in my life. The other thing you can do is take a screenshot of this episode, share it with a friend, or better yet, tag me on your Instagram stories. Remember, you are seen, known, and loved. May God richly bless you today. All my love, Erin Jean.